Deployment vehicles are ready. Take them to the battlefield. Prove your might.
Hello guys, Rhetoric here. Today I'm going to be going over the 23-1-17 build for Sith Assassin / Jedi Shadow. Now this is more of a, how do I put this? This is more of like a little bit of a recap, kind of explaining what the build does now that I've had a lot of time to kind of experiment with it, see what ticks, and basically what to do and what not to do with this build. First and foremost with this build, you are not a tank. This is not a full tank build. It should not be used as such. It should be used more of like an off-tankish DPS build. Okay, so for an example in PvE, basically what you want to do, and this applies to both PvP and PvE situations, what you want to do is you want to look for two buffs. The first buff is the Energize buff, and that comes from the Darkness tree. What that does is it makes your shocks hit a lot harder. It does not exactly proc the double shock talent from the Madness tree, but it does make your shock hit a lot harder, and that's what you're looking for. In addition to that, it also triggers, when you use shock off the Energize proc, it triggers a buff called Exploitive Strikes, which makes your Thrash hit harder. And on the other hand, Thrash makes shock, it makes the Energize buff go. So basically, what you have is you have the two buffs that work off each other to maximize your damage. So there's really no rotation. There's no, any type of skill priority. It's use what skill pops up. And with the Energize, with the Energize buff, it resets your cooldown on shock and makes it hit a lot harder. So you want to look for that a lot. That's going to really maximize your DPS right there. Using Thrash as well too, when you have the Exploitive Strikes buff on, those are things are going to be hitting for a lot. I mean, I've gone through war zones, and I'll actually show you guys an example a little bit later on in the video of just how it works. But basically the idea is, you want to be using those two skills right there, and you can throw in whatever else you want just to kind of, maximize your DPS. If you want to throw in Death Field, whenever. It's basically all situational. It's, there's no rotation, like I said, and you just use what, what pops up. And since it's only just two buffs to look for, it's not like it's, terribly difficult to do. What I like to do is, I'll spam Thrash until I get the Energize buff. Then I'll pop Recklessness, and in PvE I'll pop an Adrenal, but in PvP, since they disabled Adrenals in war zones, you can't really use that. So basically I'll just pop Recklessness and hit him with Shock, and that'll hit him for quite a bit of damage depending on what type of gear they're wearing. I mean, it's really not that difficult to take people down. And on top of that, with the defensive cooldowns you have, from the Darkness tree, you're going to be a pretty tough person to beat as well too if you have decent gear. Like right now, I just got my War Hero headpiece, and what I've noticed with the War Hero stuff, it tends to go overboard on the crit. So what you're going to want to look for as well too is you want to stack quite a bit of power. You want to have around anywhere between 25 to 30% unbuffed crit. Now with 3.0, maybe you can get away with maybe even 30 to 35% crit, but honestly 30% crit is around that sweet spot that you want to stay in. Anything more than that, you might run into some problems or stuff like that. You might run into diminishing returns. There's still a lot of experimentation to do with this build, but for the most part, 30% crit is what you want to look for with the, I believe, around 70% surge rating or so. And then the rest you want to just stack into power and willpower, and then you're basically good to go from there. Everything else is just kind of, go as it is. The only downfall to this build is the fact that the Energize buff seems to be based on RNG. Like, you could be spamming Thrash quite a bit and not get the buff, or you could just hit Thrash once and then get the buff on the first hit right there. So that's the only RNG element of it. For everything else, it's a pretty solid build though. But like I said, it's more of a jack of all trades build. You're not like a full tank and you're not a full DPS. You're just like an off-tankish DPS that has a lot of utility and quite a bit of damage to go behind it as well too. So that's all I have for right now. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it informative. And I'll see you guys next time. This is Rhetoric, signing out.